So this video will focus on chapter 17, which encompasses Western Europe in the early Middle Ages. So a little background, historians refer to the era from about 500 to 1500 as the medieval period of European history, or the Middle Ages. Like India during the post-classical era, early medieval Europe was very political. Sorry about that, a little interruption. So, like India during the post-classical era, early medieval Europe was very disunited politically. However, unlike India, Europe was almost completely disengaged from hemispheric trading and communication. So, three important developments of the early medieval era were the restoration of political order, specifically the restoration of decentralized political order that vested political authority mostly in local and regional rulers. There was also the boost in agricultural production, which increased due to the increased amount of land under cultivation and the introduction. Which was due to the increased amount of land under cultivation and the introduction of new tools and techniques, for example, the heavy plow. There is also the creation of an institutional framework, with the Christian Church based at Rome providing religious leadership and maintaining cultural unity throughout Western Europe. So after the fall of Rome in the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire fragmented into a handful of Germanic kingdoms, with the major successor states being the Visigoths in Spain, Ostrogoths in Italy, Burgundians and Franks, these guys would be very important later on, in Gaul or modern-day France, and the Angles and Saxons in Britain. So this is a map depicting the successor states with the Angles and Saxons, as we can see in Britain, the Franks in Gaul or France, the Visigoths in Spain, the Lombards in Italy, and of course we can't forget the Byzantine Empire. For the Franks, although their empire only survived a short period of time, they profoundly influenced the political, social, and cultural developments of Western Europe. Their strong agricultural base helped shift the center of gravity in Western Europe from Italy to the northern lands of Europe. This is an example of the meaning of geography changing. And they also had the development of decentralized political institutions with or a firm alliance with the church. So Clovis the Franks led his led the Franks to becoming the preeminent military and political power in Western Europe. He destroyed the last vestiges of Roman rule in Gaul and imposed his authority on the Franks themselves and dominated other Germanic peoples as a result. The Franks would rank as the most powerful and dynamic of peoples building new states in Western Europe. He was basically part of the Merovingian dynasty. So the main reason for Franks' rapid expansion in Western Europe was because of religion. Until the time of Clovis, Franks were mostly pagan or Arian Christians. However, Clovis and his army decided to choose Roman Catholicism in order to get the blessing of the Catholic Church. One of the major things that helped us was the influence of Clovis' wife, Clotilda. Now, with this allegiance of with this conversion, he basically had the allegiance of the Christian population of the Roman Empire, and he also had support from the Pope in the hierarchy of the Western Christian Church. Now, a different group of people, another group of Franks called the Carolinians, would displace the line of Clovis, and they would sort of assert their authority over the central government. The guy named Charles the Hammer Martel begins the Carolinian dynasty. He never ruled as king, but rather served as a deputy to the last of Clovis' descendants. He was basically the mayor of the palace, and he would defeat the Spanish Muslims at the Battle of the Tours or Poitiers in 732. This halts the Islamic advance into Western Europe. Now, Charlemagne, Charles the Great, was the grandson of Charles Martel. He temporarily re-established centralized imperial rule in the society, disrupted by invasion and contest of power between local rulers. Think of, let's just say, Harsha or Ashoka of India. He was, functionally illiterate, but he did support the arts. and he had a cultural/religious advisor named Alcuin. He maintained diplomatic relations with the Byzantine Empire and the Abbasid Caliphate, with the Abbasids actually giving a bino elephant as a gift. He also achieved many great military achievements. Charlemagne's administration was at Aachen in modern Germany. However, he had to constantly travel throughout the empire because he didn't have the financial resource to maintain an elaborate bureaucracy or administrative apparatus like what many of the great empires in China would have. He let counts or local rulers hold political, military, legal authority in the local jurisdictions, hence the term counties that we have today. Now, in order to make sure these counts stay in line, he would dispatch imperial officials called missi dominici, or envoys of the Lord Ruler, who traveled every year to all who would travel every year to all local jurisdictions to review the accounts of local authorities to make sure they're staying in line. So this is a nice little list of all the major control tools that many empires would use. We had the missi dominici, the Persian spies, attendants, civil service mandarins, or scholar bureaucrats, eunuchs, slaves, foreigners, auditors, or basically for today's modern corporations, the human resource department. So this is a map of the Carolingian Empire. As we can see, it encompasses a vast amount of territory, with its empire going to Spain and Germany, and incorporating a portion of northern Italy. Now, Charlemagne was hesitant to call himself emperor because he didn't want to challenge Byzantine authority. However, Pope Leo the First decided to crown him anyway as emperor in 800 on Christmas Day. Now, this was more like in all fairness, this just merely constituted a public recognition of his accomplishments, as Charlemagne had already built an imperial state. Now, nothing lasts forever, and after Charlemagne died, his descendants were ineffective in actually keeping the empire together. His grandsons divided the empire into 3 parts, and you also get invasions that help, with Vikings raiding northern France, Magyars raiding France from the east, and Muslims invading from the south. So this is a map depicting the dissolution of the Carolingian Empire, with his 3 grandsons split the empire. This part going to Charles the Bald, this part going to Lothar I, and this part going to Louis the German. And now, of course, we have the 3 major. And we have, in addition to that internal dispute, we have just 3 waves of crushing invasions here on the Vikings from the north, and actually even attacking from the south. And then we have the Muslims attacking from the south, and the Magyars attacking from the east. Now if you don't know, Magyars are these Central Asian peoples, and they're the reason why the Hungarian language is quite different from many other European languages because it doesn't have an Indo-European root. So the Vikings were Norse mariners who mounted invasions and plundering expeditions from Eastern Europe to Mediterranean lands. They would settle in England, Sicily, France, and Greenland. One of their major advantages was the fact they had boats with shallow drafts, and thus they could be sailed both in rivers and open seas. They would attack vulnerable monasteries, villages, and cities, and the Carolingians had really no navy, so they really had nothing to do. They had no means to protect themselves from Viking attacks. England would end up bearing the brunt of the earliest Viking raids. These invasions forced the consolidation of Anglo-Saxons and other Germanic peoples under King Alfred the Great, who would reign from 871 to 899. He would build a navy and construct fortresses on land, and by the mid-8th century, Alfred's successors had established themselves as kings of all England. In Germany, the invasions would bring about the end of Carolingian rule and the formation of a more effective state under a new dynasty. King Otto of Saxony would inflict a defeat that would effectively end the Magyar threat, and he would impose authority throughout Germany. He was proclaimed Holy Roman Emperor by the Pope in 962, thus marking the establishment of the Holy Roman Empire. In France, the end of Carolinian rule led to proliferation of local authorities. France would actually endure heavy Viking settlement where they carved out small independent states, for example, Normandy. And the emergence of effective regional kingdoms with local authorities would end up preventing the return of centralized imperial rule for a while. So, early medieval society, in terms of early medieval society, one of the most overarching concepts was the concept of feudalism. It entailed lords and vassals collectively taking charge of political and military affairs. Recently, it's becoming an increasingly inadequate model for describing a complex society between the relations between landowners and serfs, as they varied from region to region. It was really just morally an impromptu or ad hoc arrangement in absence of strong central authorities. And however, key thing is the states were also decentralized. So local nobles would take over administration for weak central governments, with nominal allegiances, like pledging nominal allegiances to a higher authority, especially the Canadian kings. However, nobles would act with growing independence. They would collect rent and fees, and administer local affairs, to mobilize armed forces, decide legal disputes, and seek to enhance their own authority at the expense of their superiors. Local nobles built military and political relationships with other prominent individuals in their territories. Oops, my bad. They would form small private armies and grant incentives in order to encourage loyalty. For example, grants of land or money. In exchange for their grants, retainers owed loyalty, obedience, respect, counsel, and military service to their lords. This would result in the formation of a hereditary class of military retainers, and these people would increasingly exercise political and legal rights over their holdings. They will also administer local public works projects, resolve disputes, and administer justice. Now, there was potential instability, especially with the complex interrelationship of lord-retainer relations. So, rebellion was always a possibility. Yet, it was also possible for high-ranking lords to build powerful states on the foundation of relationships. Nevertheless, viable large states eventually developed. Now, you can't talk about medieval ages without serfs. So, serfdom originated after the fall of the Western Empire, because of the fact that the population of Western Europe consisted mostly of slaves and free peasants. They worked at the same kinds of agricultural tasks and frequently intermarried. Free peasants often sought protection from a lord and pledged their labor and obedience in exchange for security and land to cultivate. And by the mid-7th century, you got the recognition of a serf class. This class was midway between slave and free peasant. So, serfs had the right to work certain lands and to pass rights to those land along to their heirs. However, they had an obligation to provide labor and payments in kind to the lord. They had little opportunity to move different lands, and they were charged fees for marrying serfs of another lord. The manor was the principal form of agricultural organization. The large states consisting of fields, meadows, forests, agricultural tools, domestic animals, sometimes lakes and rivers, as well as serfs bound to the land. The lord provides governance, police, and the justice services. In the absence of cities, manors became largely self-sufficient communities. So this is a map of a medieval manor with, as we can see, strips of this red land, like these red strips depicting land that would be cultivated for the lord. The green ones being the common fields, some roads. Some buildings that allows for self-sufficiency, for example, a mill, a bakehouse, a blacksmith, a barn, a village, and a church and a priest's house. Some common pasture. And here we have the manor. In terms of economy, by the mid-10th century, political stability served as a foundation for economic recovery, and Western Europeans began to participate more actively in the larger trading world. The agricultural center moved north from the Mediterranean, and one of the things that allowed for this was the introduction of the 8th century of iron-tipped heavy plows. You also had the breeding of draft animals, watermill technology, and you also had draft animals being bred and watermill technology being invented. However, this agricultural product output was insufficient to support the growth of large cities. You also now you did have some strong Mediterranean trade despite Muslim domination of the seas. So this is a map of the population growth of Europe. As we can see, after the fall, as we can see, after around the fall of the Roman Empire, or the fall of the Roman Empire. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. The population of Europe just plummets, and possibly quite a great human catastrophe. Oops, sorry. However, it eventually begins to recover due to agricultural output. So one of the most important developments in the early Middle Ages was the conversion of Western Europe to Christianity. This was helped by Clovis' conversion, which forms a strong alliance with Roman Christianity. The church would supply Clovis with a class of literate workers, such as scribes, secretaries, and record keepers. The Franks would serve as the protectors of the papacy, with, for example, Charlemagne destroying the Lombards who were threatening the Pope. In exchange for military and political support, the Carolingians received recognition and backing from the popes, for example, awarding Charlemagne the imperial crown. This would help spread Christianity in northern areas and would support scholarship and scribal activity. You also had an increase in literacy and an explosion in writing. Now, keep in mind, most people are still illiterate, but you did have some more production. You had more production of some books. One of the most important popes in this time period would be Pope Gregory the First, or Gregory the Great. He was responsible for providing the Roman Church with a sense of direction. He ensured the survival of both Rome and in the Church by mobilizing local resources and organizing a defense. He would assert papal primacy, declaiming the Bishop of Rome was the ultimate authority in the Christian Church. He also was a prominent theologian, created the sacrament of penance, basically offering forgiveness. This would be a huge incentive. This would be a huge incentive for kings to stay on line. He also started some major missionary activity, especially in England. Now, many devout Christians in Egypt from the 2nd to 3rd century sought to lead ascetic and holy lives. And so you got the beginnings of monasticism. This lifestyle would expand in the 4th century with a large variety of monastic rules, ranging from extremely strict to very lax. Now, the man who eventually codified all the rules for monasticism would be Saint Benedict. He strengthened the early monastic movement by providing a discipline and sense of purpose. He wrote the Benedict's Rule, which emphasized monks to be poor, chaste, and obedient. He would spend time in prayer, meditation, and work. He also... Now, his sister, Saint Scholastica, would adopt the Benedictine rule for convents and nuns. Even today, most Roman Catholic missionaries observe rules that reflect the influence of the Benedictine tradition. European monasteries provide a variety of social services, such as inns, refuges, orphanages, schools, medical care, libraries. Because of their various roles, they played the larger society. Monasteries were particularly effective agents in the spread of Christianity. So this is a map depicting the expansion of Christianity, first, as we can see, in the former territories of the Roman Empire, but then in 600, but then slowly expanding from there on. And that is all. Thank you.